Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Elevated Marketing Podcast. Here we are in 2024, ready to do this another year. We have
Crazy.
been doing, yes, we have been doing this podcast for a long time, weekly. It never gets old to me. I love talking about different marketing topics. So we're gonna make today fun and talk about email marketing newsletter, which might sound a little boring, but it's a very important marketing tool that you should be using. So before we get started there, let's go over to what people tend to talk about, I feel like, in marketing. And what is a recent social media trend that makes you cringe?
Ooh,
There's so
okay,
many.
there are, and I think this is maybe more okay. So I love TikTok. I'm sure I've mentioned that a few times on this podcast. Um, and so I scroll TikTok, and a lot of times I will they're not ads, but they are ambassador videos, so just like influencers, and they're promoting a product on TikTok Shop. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that these items that they're promoting on TikTok Shop are actually knockoffs, but they are using the brand name. So, for instance, Tarte, it's a makeup brand.
Yeah.
They have this popular lip gloss, and TikTok Shop, it's available there for $9 versus the $24, but a lot of people aren't aware that they're just knockoff products. I'm not even sure how that's legal to be. I don't know. I don't know the legalities behind it, but that's a trend that makes me cringe, especially the the beach waiver. I see this every 5 minutes or every 5 videos that I'm on. Like, that makes me cringe because I'm like, "You're using the real thing, but promoting a fake one." So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. As far as the legality, I would say that's probably a whack-a-mole for brands is how quickly can they get the social media platforms to take them down.
Right.
What they're doing is they might have a knockoff or they're actually buying their product and they're just reselling it, but they're upping the price on it and they're making money off of it. And as you're alluding to, it's a scam. And
Mhm.
so it's pretty annoying. But
Yeah.
people are people.
Well, I mean, you never expect that, I don't know, maybe one of your biggest competitors is actually your product, just a
Yeah.
fake of your product,
So
which
I'll
could
stay
be
along that line on what's making me cringe is the amount of AI generated
Mhm.
headshots.
Yes.
And the fact that people are not saying they're AI and they're, oh, that's a great headshot. And I can very easily tell. I mean, you can go to somebody's profile and you can see. I mean, the dead giveaway a lot of times is they look about 10 to 20 years younger than what they actually do in real life. And
Yes.
it's just, it's so fake. And I guess that and the other trend that I really hate is the filters like on
Mhm.
TikTok and places, and I just it's just this perception of a lie of who you really are, and,
Mhm.
if I've got a pimple on my face, you're gonna see it, like,
Sure.
there's not gonna be anything covering that up.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah, those are the things that are currently annoying me. Alright, so let's talk about the power of an email marketing newsletter. And unlike social media and trends and things that we, see and get excited about and what to follow and not follow, email is kind of that old dog that has been around for a very long time.
Mhm.
Fun fact, the first email was sent in 1971, which is before I was even born. And the first email campaign was sent in 1978, which is the year I was born. So, for that fun fact, that is close a little over 45 years old that email marketing has been around. So I think it's a forgotten tool. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely agree. I think, I don't know, there's different perceptions when it comes to email marketing, and I think a lot of it has to do with the content that you put in it and the design of that, which I know we'll get into it. Um, but yeah, I think there may be some misconceptions when it comes to email marketing.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, does it really work? Yes, it does.
Mhm.
So, today we're specifically talking about a marketing newsletter, and you run all of our email marketing here. So, walk me through the purpose of sending an email marketing newsletter. Like, what is it and
Mhm.
why do I want to do it?
Well, first thing is first, you've hopefully been gathering emails, and most people do. That's just a given, right? Well, you've done that work. You want to stay in contact with this list. You want to stay in contact with your audience, and
Mhm.
sending that monthly newsletter is the perfect way to do it because you aren't annoying them. You aren't bombarding them with multiple emails in a week. It's just one email a week, and so then when it gets down to the actual purpose of, maybe what's included in that newsletter, you're producing content and if you aren't, you should be.
Yeah.
Um, you're producing content. You need to get that content out. It's just a great way to keep your audience connected and, just stay in contact with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a monthly newsletter is just a great way to build trust, like
Hmm.
some
Absolutely.
credibility, when you're in somebody's inbox and they are opening your newsletters every month, you know that you are top of mind for them.
Yeah.
They might not be ready to buy. And I think you hit on something else there is, the whole point of email marketing is, your ability to not only build the list, because that's step one, you got to have a
Mhm.
list, but step two is to nurture that list.
Yep.
Because if you get somebody on your email list, keeping them on that email list is important because you don't want them to not open your emails. What's the point of a list of 1,000 people if only 100 of them open it?
For
Plus,
sure.
it can affect your email deliverability, right?
Hmm. Well, and I mean, back to nurturing that list. I mean, if you're running ads, there's a possibility that you might be using this list to target in your ads. And so, if they're getting that communication from you on the email side, if they see an ad come up from you on the other side, they're probably more likely to engage with that ad. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And, uh, there is some truth to, unlike social media platforms, you're not really at the mercy of algorithms, but you are at the mercy of whether or not an email actually makes somebody's inbox.
Yes.
There is some control there, and I know in 2024, there's some new rules coming out that I'm sure we'll talk on a podcast soon, but it is getting harder. But you own your email list, unlike a
Mhm.
social media platform where you don't necessarily own your audience.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think, a lot of that could be affected is, I mean, definitely your open rates. Um, I think even now it's sometimes hard to pinpoint the accuracy of an open rate when you're looking back at the data.
Mhm.
But, we're marketers, we have to adapt. We'll find a way.
So we've talked about why to have a newsletter. Like, what should be in your newsletter, and how often should you be sending it?
Yes, both good questions. In terms of what should be in your newsletter, again, content that you're producing. So we keep a lot of our recent blog posts in our newsletter, and we don't put the whole post. We've just got the featured image and a line or two about the blog post, and then a button that sends them to read that post. We include our podcast episodes. So one of our most recent episodes from the podcast. I think another big thing, and depending on the industry you're into, you should definitely, if you're more of a service industry, I think, company updates is really nice to include
Yes.
because most likely you're working with a local audience. And so, it adds that personal touch, and it's not just a sales email,
Yep.
you're getting personal with it. If you are like e-com, or, maybe even if you are service and you've got some sort of promotion, that's great to include. Um,
Even an e-com though should have written content that they're writing on a regular basis that should be a part of that. I think a common failure I see there sometimes is only sending emails when you have promotions,
yes.
and people are gonna get really sick of seeing that email, and they're gonna stop opening it, and then your email list is gonna go dead.
Exactly. Well, and like that's the thing, like keep in mind this is a monthly newsletter. This is all set aside from any other emails that you could and probably should be sending.
Right.
If you do have those promotions going on, it shouldn't only be included in your newsletter. You should have its own campaign, directed towards that.
Yep.
But yeah. I mean, I think, once you start with this email marketing, you're going to have content in there that may work, it may not work. And after a few months or so of adding and taking away content, you'll really be able to niche down what your audience responds to the best. And
Yep.
you'll want to pay attention to your click-through rate. That's how you're going to be able to judge if, this content that you're including is hitting for your audience or not.
I mean, the most important thing is to have good content to have in the email newsletter.
Mhm.
You can't just send a newsletter just to send it.
Right.
And like you kind of alluded to in the beginning, you should already have a pretty full content
Yeah.
plan that you're already either, writing written content, video content, podcasts, there's content that's already consistently being done both online and offline. And an email newsletter is nothing more than a wrap up of everything that happened for the last month.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's just like basically a recap of your past month. That's like a really good way to put it, I think.
Yep, and a different way, in social media, you're just, like, seeing these posts, like, daily, and not everybody's gonna see those posts, but if they're on your email list, they are going to see all of
Mhm.
that information in one big wrap up, and, if they're really engaged with your brand, they're gonna find that helpful, and if they're not, they'll unsubscribe.
Yep.
So, gotta
Yeah.
have good content.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely agree. Um, how often you should be sending a newsletter? We like to send monthly newsletters. You could send weekly, biweekly. I think in our experience, we found a monthly email tends to go over a little better. You have more content that you can include in that newsletter if you do it monthly versus, weekly or biweekly. And I think, that often of weekly or biweekly, it could be a little repetitive and maybe annoying.
Yeah, I think that also depends on how much content you're producing.
Yeah.
If it's a weekly newsletter, you're probably a pretty large company. You have a lot of
Mhm.
updates. You're probably in an industry that's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be this weekly type email.
Yeah.
And so that to me can make sense if there is enough content that sending weekly email. But the other metric I would say to pay attention to is your open rate. If
Mhm.
you have a low open rate, you're really probably annoying people because they don't have time, believe it or not, to read your email newsletter every week.
Yeah, and I think to go along with that, the duration of your newsletter, how long should that be? Again, I don't know, I kinda think it depends on what content you are including.
Mhm.
I would never I don't know, you kinda keep in mind most everybody is looking at your email on a mobile device. Think
Yes.
about how many scrolls they might be scrolling to get to the bottom of your email.
Yeah.
I would say, like, anywhere from, I don't know, let's say 2 to 4 scroll passes is
Probably
safe
good enough.
limits.
Yeah.
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 I think any more than that, then maybe you should cut back on what's in your email.
Yeah, yeah. I think you want to get people over to your website, and
Mhm.
so you just want to get enough juicy information that they're willing to go over to the website. So putting too
Yeah,
much in the body of the email can also deter people as like, oh, that's really long.
yeah, yeah, and the use of graphics too. I think, some people have their images and their emails turned off, but I would say a lot of people probably don't, especially if, they're just in your customer base or an audience of yours. Um, I think the use of graphics can, like, help cut back on the use of text, and therefore it can make your emails a little shorter.
Yep, yep. Any last minute thoughts on the power of an email marketing newsletter?
Yeah, I think, email marketing isn't going to be what makes business boom like crazy, but it's one of those puzzle pieces to fit in and help make your business grow.
Yeah.
Again, we always say don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but don't limit yourself either. So,
Yep. Consistency of marketing. So, all right. Well, that wraps it up for now. Thanks for listening to the Elevated Marketing podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, we would certainly appreciate if you rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. We do our own newsletter, so certainly go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. Follow along there and follow along on social media as we put out new weekly podcasts. All right, take care.